Welcome to the fifth episode of our series Free Will in Astrology. Today with a very special guest from the United States in Connecticut, Dr. Anthony Lewis. Greetings.
Hello, good to see you again.
And today we will talk about free will in astrology. And we have prepared a special site. You find it on our site Astrologie im 21. Jahrhundert. It's on the site astrology.vonabisw.de. You can see this here. Okay, we have a film. We have an old page when we did our last talk with Anthony, and that is here. And you can look at that. And here's a film list. If you are interested in the biography of Anthony, no, where is it? There it is. This first video, there is a lot of biography, and we don't want to repeat ourselves. And it's identical with this video in our new channel. And there's a lot of videos you can look up with Anthony, so we don't have to do this today. And we will talk about his book, but I have a question beforehand. Your book has been in print till 2008, but nowadays, if you want to have the new version, it's only in Kindle. Will there be a print edition soon?
Oh, I didn't realize actually it was no longer in print.
It's as you can see, it's only used. It's not officially on Amazon. It's this used section, the marketplace. So if you could do this again in print, I ordered the used book today. It would probably be nice for interested people that it will be again in print. And the last one was from 2008. Okay, so we will talk about your book later.
Okay.
I will start with some questions. And the first question is, when was the first time in your personal life that you realized there is sort of a problem in the history of philosophy and of astrology with fate and free will? And how was your reaction then and since then? Do you remember when you first came about the problem?
Probably fairly early, but I don't remember specifically.
Okay.
And I say fairly early because I attended Catholic schools as a child.
Yes.
Up till the 8th grade. And we were taught by nuns. And so there was always a discussion of religion, and free will was often mentioned, that God gave us free will. It was part of the doctrine we were taught. And that it was up to us to make the right choices. And so that was kind of ingrained from childhood in the school system I was in.
Okay.
And so I can't pin a year, but I'd say in my first 8 years of schooling, it was discussed.
And how was the problem presented to you? That there is a free will always, or is there something like fate?
That there was a combination.
Okay. And since then, did you put your interest on this question in sort of reading old philosophers like Platonists and Neoplatonists who talk a lot about this problem, or the Stoics? Was that something of your interest, or did you just leave it there? Okay, there's a mixture of the both.
Probably when I was at university and took philosophy courses, yes. Before that, at high school, I remember reading some of the American authors like Ralph Waldo Emerson who discussed this. And so, I wouldn't say it was a major interest, but certainly I was aware of it and thought about it.
So it wasn't so much of interest for you that you dig into Plato, into Proclus, into Plotin, into the Stoics and all these people. That was not what you did.
In my university years, I was very interested, yeah.
what was the result of that, dealing with these books and lectures? How did you come out of this confrontation with the problem? Were
And what was my
you
res
convinced of a certain approach? Is there an Anthony Lewis approach to fate and providence?
Well,
Do
I
you
don't think,
do you
yeah.
differentiate the two? Do you differentiate? Have you a different view on providence on the one side and fate on the other side?
Well, but let me try to think this through out loud here.
Okay.
I would say that I was always interested in science
Okay.
and had a strong feeling that there was a certain amount of determinism, that if you knew the antecedents, you could predict the consequences, at least on a physical level. And in terms of human biology, it seemed to me that, I grew up in a period when DNA was being discovered and the double helix and so on. And that the genes in this remarkable little strand of molecules could determine the entire growth pattern of the subsequent human being, including personality traits, proneness to diseases, shape and form of the body, skills, talents, etc. So there did seem to be a strong determinism in nature, but I didn't feel it was absolute.
And that was a more, let's put it, materialistic biological approach, like the Stoics would probably use it, because Stoa is a materialistic philosophy.
Probably, yeah.
So let me ask you, from the term archetypal cosmology, did you ever in your studies or in your high school times, did you ever come about the term archetypes, and do you remember what it did to you?
In terms of reading Carl Jung, yes.
For example, Carl Jung.
Yeah.
Do you realize that the term archetypes might be used synonymously with the ideas of Plato?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so we have the spiritual approach as well in your biography. How did you react to this discussion, archetypal cosmology, archetypes in the Jung's psychology? You being a Freudian psychotherapist, you never treated patients according to the Jung approach. You always treated them according to the Freudian approach. Is that right?
Well, I wouldn't say, I would consider myself an eclectic psychotherapist.
So, your wife was Freudian and you were eclectic. Okay, yeah, last time. Okay, so
in the sense that I am opposed to dogma.
okay, so
That I don't believe something because an authority says
yeah,
it's true.
okay.
I need evidence to believe it.
Which is difficult with archetypes if you are not going through the same experience Jung did with his Red Book in 1913 to 1916. Did you ever try to make the same experience, which is rather dangerous?
What are you referring to?
To the Red Book of C.G. Jung, where he shows the world in the Red Book how he experienced the archetypes personally.
No, not in the same way.
Did you do something with the archetypes? Did you ever meet an archetype personally? Put it this way.
Meet an archetype.
Well, Jung says he met them.
Yeah, no, I would not say I met them.
Okay, so what is an archetype for you?
An archetype is, I would define it very much like one of Plato's forms. It's an abstract idea or model of something that we can only see manifestations of in our day-to-day existence.
Okay, so if we integrate in our discussion the myth of air, you are familiar with it, you just told me the beginning of our talk.
Yes.
The myth of air is a rather intriguing story in the Politeia of Plato at the end of the book, and there people can look that up. If you want to read the myth of air, you can go to this link. And we both know what's in it, so I can ask you directly.
Mm-hmm.
If you take the daimon in this myth, there is a daimon.
Yes.
Who is given to you before you are born, and you chose certain aspects of your future life, and then according to what you chose, the prophet gives you the daimon. And we can see the book The Daimon in Hellenistic Astrology by Dorian Greenbaum for people to read it. And we have the zodiacal releasing in modern classical traditional Hellenistic astrology. So for you, the myth of air is just a fable, a story not relevant for you, or does it have more?
I wouldn't say it's not relevant.
Okay, what's your connection to this myth of air and the mentioned daimon in it?
I would call it a myth, meaning that it's an important story, probably on an archetypal level.
Do you personally believe that before you were born, that you experienced something like what air experienced in the myth?
I don't know. I think it's possible, but I wouldn't say I believe it, but nor do I disbelieve it.
Okay.
I just don't know.
So
let me say that I view, for instance, this story of Plato or most of the great literature as being mythic, including the biblical stories. I don't think they really happened or the way they're reported, but I think they contain important truths on an archetypal level that is valid. There was one quote, it was a Roman author who said, this is a paraphrase, a myth is a story that was never true but always will be.
Okay. And we both do realize that in the context of Chris Brennan's astrology podcast, there is a lot of information about the so-called zodiacal releasing, which has to do with two lots, the lot of fortune and the lot of daimon and other lots.
Yes.
First question, do you use that technique?
I am familiar with it. I periodically use it, but I don't rely on it. Yeah.
When you say you use it, do you believe in it, in its functionality?
It does seem to work, yeah.
Okay. So you are agnostic whether you experienced the daimon you got before birth. You leave that open for discussion. But basically, what the zodiacal releasing technique does is getting in contact with this same daimon, isn't it? So how do you explain that? If you are agnostic about having experienced the whole thing before birth?
I'm agnostic, but I'm not a non-believer, nor am I a believer.
Okay.
So I guess that's a definition of agnostic.
So basically, we are approaching the problem of free will in astrology via this discussion, because let's pretend like let's say I believe in getting this whole experience like air did in his myth of air in Plato's dialogue, Politeia. And I read the book of Gisela Greenbaum about the tradition of daimon in the antique scriptures. And then we have this method of zodiacal releasing. So for me, the free will exists only in the time before birth. When I choose what lot, structure I want to have in the future life, whether I want to be a human being or an animal. And after I had chosen with my free will before birth, because there it is free will, you choose whether you want to be a human being, an animal, whether you want to become a bad person or a good person. And then according to your choosing, the prophet assigns to you the concrete diamond to fulfill your choice. And then we have the situation that the zodiacal releasing sort of shows how this diamond works through life. So would you agree that the free will is something before birth and after there is no free will?
No.
How do you argue? How's your argument on that
how
point?
are you depends on how you're defining free will. If free will is self-determination, it seems to me it's always in effect, not just before life. And that free will, well, I don't know how you define free will.
Well, I don't have to define. I want to know how you define it, because the series is about different people. I have Dr. Peter Niehenke, who has a very clear opinion. There is no such thing in free will at all, because scientifically that doesn't work that way. It's in German, unfortunately, and I think you don't speak German. I think
I know a teeny bit, but not enough to.
And I had Christoph Schubert-Weller, former president of the German Astrological Association. Peter Niehenke was in the same function from 81 to 91, and Schubert-Weller was the president of the German Astrological Association from 2005 to 2011, and the two differ quite substantially. Christoph says, I'm a Stoic, which is a certain philosophy. Niehenke says, I'm not. I say I am a myth of air propagandist. You say you are not like me, correct?
In the sense that I don't have a conviction that it's true.
Right.
I have a conviction that it contains valuable
I have
knowledge.
the conviction that it's true. You don't have that conviction, so we differ on that point. We both agree that the technique, zodiacal releasing, is relying on the daimon in the sense of the myth of air. And for me, free will would be to execute what I chose before birth. Because I had
but then
choice.
I would ask, was that choice free?
Yes, that choice was free. That was totally free.
I would say it probably wasn't, because that choice was determined by all the past lives that preceded.
Not in the myth of air. In the myth of air, you are free. Plato says, when you choose, you are totally free. You can choose to be an animal. You can choose to be a bad person. You can choose to be a good person. And he doesn't. He doesn't look at formula. On the contrary, he says it doesn't matter how your former lives were. You have now the free choice. Now, only now. And after you have chosen, you get the diamond as a necessary result of your choice. That is the myth of air.
Well, then I wouldn't agree with Plato there. I say he's wrong.
Okay, that was
clearly
important. Yeah, right.
If you've had many past lives and you've made that choice many times before, the current choice is in part determined by the previous choices. It's not entirely free.
And there you would differ from Plato, which is correct.
Yeah.
There is a difference there.
Right.
Okay. Let's leave it there, because we don't want to have a long discussion who is right, who is wrong. What would that be good
I don't think anybody knows if they're right or wrong. That's my position.
And now we are coming to the archetypes. Let's take for a second my position with the daimon and the free choice before birth. Where come the archetypes in that picture? We have a lot of information in philosophy. I can go to Cornelius Agrippa von Nettesheim, and he wrote a 3-book paper on 3 books of occult philosophy.
Yes.
I recommend the viewers to look up Ludovico Lazzarelli, because Agrippa von Nettesheim was heavily influenced by Ludovico Lazzarelli in Italy. And some people say Ludovico Lazzarelli, who is very important for the Hermetic tradition, Corpus Hermeticum. And in Agrippa, we have these spheres. We have the material sphere in book 1. We have the sphere above the lunar sphere, and then we have in the 3rd book the sphere, the divine sphere above the fixed stars. Where would you place the archetypes? Are they in the 2nd book or in the 3rd book? They are definitely not in the 1st book, but because that's material world. But would you attribute the living sphere of the archetypes in the 2nd book or in the 3rd book?
I would probably place it in the 3rd book.
You would put them in the 3rd book, which is probably what I would do too. But that means the archetypes are of divine nature.
Right. Ideas in the mind of God.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if we do that, and we combine that with our theory about the daimon, the archetypes are much more powerful than we are as human beings. And the archetypes support the daimon in his work, right? So if the archetypes, all of them, there are higher ranked archetypes. Thora Detlefs in Germany, an esoteric astrologer, says astrology as the teaching of primordial principles, not of the stars or planets. Therefore, the planets can never be called as only signs, as representative for one of the 7 primordial principles. And he thinks in our category that the primordial principles are higher ranked archetypes. Now 10, as above, so below. The horoscope as the teaching and learning plan for the life of the individual. And here we have this connection. When we look in the horoscope, we look into the archetypes, right? And if we look into the archetypes, we are on the divine plane. And there we have the learning plan for the life of the individual. But if the divine sphere is represented in the horoscope, is all what is left for us to do free decisions only, as somebody said, I want to do what the divine wants me to do. Let's put it this way, Lord, not my will, but your will be done. So would you agree with my position that we are not free in what we do, but we are free to do what the Lord wants us to do? Very metaphysical.
Well, the way I would view free will, or that I do view free will, is that we are free to make choices about our own behavior or actions. And we are responsible for those choices.
But doesn't that mean that you deny the powerful influence of the divine in the archetypes in our horoscope?
No.
Okay. How do you consolidate your view of free will with the influence and the divine will, what you should do because of your daimon, which you chose?
But the daimon, as I understand the concept, I'm thinking back to, for instance, it comes up in Socrates mentions his daimon. And the way he talks about it, if I recall, it's been a while since I've read this, is that when he has a difficult decision to make, he'll listen to his daimon for advice.
Okay.
But then he makes the decision. The daimon doesn't.
So
the daimon gives him valuable information, which helps guide him toward his free choice.
So when Socrates does this, he is more on the I decide and not you, Lord, decide, and I want to fulfill your decision. Lord, not my will, but your will be done, is a different position to what you just said, right?
But that's a choice. Not
Yes,
my will, but your will be
yes,
done.
the choice,
You're choosing not to do what you want,
yes, the
to
choice,
do what you believe the Lord wants.
Socrates, in your telling, was free. He listens to the diamond as an advisor, but he, Socrates, decides, not the diamond.
Correct. And this is during his lifetime.
Right. But the sentence, Lord, not my will, but your will be done, would be not Socratic in that connotation, because then if the diamond says you should do this, Socrates should have followed his advice, which he must not do, in your opinion. So we have different positions, right?
Right, but the diamond isn't the Lord here, at least as I understand it. The diamond,
he's the representative of the law, of the divine.
a representative, a lower level.
Ah, okay. There
representative.
There your exit comes around the corner. Okay. Okay, interesting. Good. So,
as I understand the concept, and again, I'm no scholar here, I may be wrong, but the diamond was considered a sort of semi-divine being, or partially divine.
Okay.
It wasn't the divinity itself. It was a representative, like an angel, for example. Might be a diamond.
And we are of the same opinion that the way astrology works is never causes, it's always only signs, right?
As I see it, probably yes, but I wouldn't rule out causes, because I believe there's a lot we don't know about the universe.
Well, if I come from my myth of air, in my personal belief, there's no way for causes, because causes on the material sphere doesn't work for me if I'm talking about divine will and archetypes. But that is open for discussion. You said in one of the former interviews, when you were talking about orrery, that it is very important to do a prayer before the question in orrery is solved. Is that right? Is that prayer after the client has posed the question, or is that prayer before the client poses the question?
I mean, in a way, it doesn't matter, because the prayer is an acknowledgement that this is a form of divination, that you're seeking guidance through some, I don't know to call it, from some level of the universe that you normally don't have access.
Through archetypes on the third level of Agrippa von Nettesheim.
Sure. Okay. Right. But you're seeking, I'll say, divine guidance, whatever that means.
Yes.
And that the prayer is simply, let me do this right, and let me do it in a helpful way.
And when do you pray? Before the client asks the question, or after the client asks the question?
I don't have it depends.
Oh, that's different from time to time. Okay.
In other words, if I know someone is going to consult me with a question, then I would beforehand, before the consultation, to prepare for the consultation, say this type of prayer.
Yes.
If in like we're talking now, and you suddenly say, oh, I have this really important matter, could I ask you a question, a horary question? Then it would be after you ask the question, because I wasn't expecting the question.
Okay.
But the whole point is, before I actually do the analysis of the horary chart, I would acknowledge that this is a form of divination, and that I need help with it. I can't do it by myself. I need some kind of my daimon or somebody to help me.
Okay, last question for our first part. We have 7 minutes left.
Okay.
When Iamblichus, one of the Neoplatonists after Plotin and Porphyrius and before Proclus, introduced theology into philosophy. He said that you can try to mitigate providence and fate. And let's open the question what the difference might be. Do you believe in mitigation, like sacrifices for the gods, for the archetypes? Do you apply astrocartography to mitigate providence and fate? How about gem and herbal remedies, mantras, pilgrimage to a sacred site, talismans? Some astrologers, some magical astrologers produce talismans and amulets. How about alchemy and spells? This was discussed in the first edition of the Journal of the Young Astrologers in America by Jens Arzt in the first edition. How is your position about this?
I'm very skeptical of mitigation.
Okay.
To me, it seems more like a superstitious practice. Don't step on cracks.
What do you mean by superstitious? What is superstition for you? Because we talked about things other people would say, which is very much superstitious. When we talk about the third book of Agrippa of Nettesheim, a lot of university professors would ask to get us into an asylum, because these people are not right in their minds when they talk about the third book of Agrippa of Nettesheim. So what is superstition in that context? We both were superstitious when talking about Nettesheim, and now you say you think that's superstition. Why not say it's a part of the third sphere?
I guess you could. I'm very skeptical, and it sounds to be like, I do things like I'll knock on wood or do things like that, so automatically.
Would you have this opinion because you think this is not the proper way to address the archetypes? This is trivial, and the archetypes is not correct to deal with archetypes in that way. Would you? Is that your reason?
No, I think it's more that a feeling that I, as an individual, can control the universe. I think that's nonsense.
Oh, okay.
And practices that I'm taking the place of the archetype or the divinity. I don't think that I can.
And you shouldn't probably, because the wrath of the divine might fall.
I'm not so worried about that. It's more like arrogance. What makes me think I can control?
Well, I'm pretty sure your personal diamond gets rather unpleasant if you defy the divine quality.
That could be, but it's not a fear of retribution. It's more, what makes me think I can control the universe? I can't.
Isn't the practice of solar returns in astrological counseling some sort of mitigation?
I don't view it that way. I view it more like a weather forecast.
Okay.
That if I'm about to go on a journey, I'll look up what's the weather like in the country I'm going to, and I'll dress accordingly.
Yes, okay.
I'm not controlling the weather. I'm just looking ahead and preparing.
And that, dear viewers, will be the theme of our second part of today's talk with Anthony, because we will talk about his book about solar returns and how one should do solar returns. In my opinion, mitigating, in his opinion, doing something like a weather forecast. So for now, I stop the recording for the first part.